I just wanted to start off and tease you and start my show off with the song because it puts us in a frame of mind into yet another subject that conspiracy realists are challenging. Hi again, this is Luca Mino with Learn to Unlearn. Whether or not Stanley Kubrick did or did not help out with the staging of Going to the Moon, and if it was a theater production, a Hollywood theater production instead, and it was all a hoax. Well, believe you me, I'm still working on that one. I'm still watching, I'm still learning, I'm still reading more than ever, but still smiling because I still hear people talk about even the International Space Station being fake because, complete with slow-mo explanations of interviews and how people react in weightlessness and zero-G, and that's not possible, and that wouldn't be fluttering up and down like that. And they give examples as to how it couldn't be in zero-G, complete with green screens too, So, something else too. What about the Challenger astronauts? Some are saying now on social media that they're still alive, Sharon Krista McAuliffe, the Challenger payload specialist, is now Sharon A. McAuliffe's Syracuse law professor, or Francis Richard Scobie, who was the commander of Challenger, turns out to be Richard Scobie these days, CEO of Cows and Trees Limited. Michael J. Smith, Challenger pilot, turns into Michael J. Smith, Professor Emeritus, University of what looks like to be Wisconsin at Madison, I'm not sure. I mean, why do people even do these things? I remember shortly after the Challenger explosion, too, they were interviewing kids in school, high school, about this kind of stuff, and one kid said, "No, I don't buy it. They probably got him out at the last minute or whatever, and probably being kept for some secret experiments or something." So far from the truth, are we? Somebody told me once, you better choose your battles wisely. And this is my point. This is what I'm doing. But every now and again, you hear what you need to hear right when you need to hear it. Like Zen or perfection, it's always there, right when you need it. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear, as they say, right? Well, this is one of the firsts for me because it answers a lot of questions in my mind, and it really helped me out at that time. When I heard it the first time, it was like, wow, thank you. And it's just a little acknowledgement that you're on the right track. Spirit brings you these kinds of miracles every now and then when you're ready for them. And this is less than 1 minute. It's 44 seconds, actually. And it tied the knot of my knowledge to what the truth really is and how corrupt and criminal this country has become, or always was. This is America, not the greatest country in the world speech. I think it was what they called 3 minutes of the most honest television that there ever was, but turns out to be 44 seconds for me because the rest was hogwash.
And yeah, you, sorority girl, just in case you accidentally wander into a voting booth one day, there's some things you should know. And one of them is, there is absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. Now, none of this is the fault of a 20-year-old college student, but you nonetheless are, without a doubt, a member of the worst generation ever. So when you ask what makes us the greatest country in the world, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Yosemite?
And then I worked more years uncovering the worst I'd ever seen, I thought, time and time again, and then suddenly one day I hit on another gold mine. This one was a lot more explicit and much more detailed, showing us how disposable we are as a people. Something else, again, that was right there at the right time when I needed to hear it the most, and just be acknowledged once again in the way I thought.
Hello. In the traditional motion picture story, the villains are usually defeated. The ending is a happy one. I can make no such promise for the picture you're about to watch. The story isn't over. You and the audience are part of the conflict.
More human beings were slaughtered in the 20th century than in all previous centuries combined.
We're talking a congressional record, 135 million dead.
Their entire purpose was to detach our culture from any moral anchors whatsoever.
You look at the changes in America since 1960, perhaps. The whole culture has been transformed.
They're coming out of the belief that the village should raise the child. The village means the government.
They have deliberately destroyed the American family, understanding that's the foundational block that builds a society.
We've come from Norman Rockwell's America to Hugh Hefner's America.
If we lose the Judeo-Christian framework, we're lost forever.
While the USA goes around the world expounding on the virtues of its way of life, it is obvious that those in charge place little value on human life. They are willing to kill thousands, even millions, for profit, for power, for money, for oil and resources. The USA doesn't even value the lives of its own citizens. Witness the numerous testings of weapons, drugs, medications, pesticides, GMOs, subterfuge on its own population. One of the few developed nations that fails its citizens totally in the area of the right to adequate health care. Those who cannot afford it do not get it. Financially, mentally, and physically robbed by politicians, banksters, and industry without the capacity to understand how to care for themselves, they end up homeless on the street, begging for money, being robbed, being beaten, being hungry, committing crimes because they have no choice. Then there are the families. The lives of these families are becoming pure hell. There is violence, destruction, and threats. An all-out attack from the health system, the government, law enforcement, and even neighbors.
The state itself is ultimate, that there's nothing, no law higher than the state, and if there's no law higher than the state, there's no appeal against it.
They're training them for the collective, and a collective mindset and a dependency mindset.
And it seems that they, again, want to have people be uneducated, so then they do become wards of the state. They're dependent on the government to provide everything for them.
So, meet the mentally ill of the USA and the victims of the many who go without being cared for. Meet the disposable people. The political pundits and politicians have started a mantra about gun control in order to gain more control over the population. It's not the guns, stupid. It's the lack of care for your own people. It is suggested that the USA get its own house in order before dictating to the rest of the world. Use the many blessings and resources of the land, the people, for your own, and not for trotting around the globe, killing others for profit, whilst those at home suffer. The capitalist system sees people as a disposable commodity, to be thrown out if not productive or useful in some way. The American dream. You have to be asleep to believe it.
Once people figure it out, they're going to do what people everywhere do. They're going to start protesting and they're going to start revolting. And when that happens, that's when the powers that be feel threatened and they use the power that they have.
Meet the USA's disposable people. Oil soaked and fracked, food poisoned, inoculated by tainted vaccines, Fukushima radiation, trapped by mainstream media propaganda, spied upon by government, impoverished, murdered. A homeless empire created by and destroyed by the US military-industrialist complex. Treated like garbage. Promulgated by the same shady cast of characters responsible for embroiling us in the endless war on terror in the first place. Americans, the disposable people. Shalom.
So once you can wrap your head around thinking or knowing that we're no more than cattle to the powers that be, just slaves at best, and tax bitches, then we can clearly see the motivation behind schooling and then also prison. Right when I need to see this, again, it pops up. In the case of schooling and education, check this out. It is simply to reduce as many individuals as possible to the same safe level, to breed and to train a standardized citizenry, to put down dissent and originality. This is the aim of the United States, whatever the pretensions of politicians, pedagogues, and other mountebanks. Never heard that word before. And that is the aim everywhere else. Brought to you by H.L. Mencken in 1924. It's pretty disturbing. Another one that I wanted to show today, these are screenshots. Quote, "We must focus on creating citizens for the good of society. Public schools promote civic rather than individual pursuits. Each child belongs to the state." And most people that know about the birth certificate will go, see, each child belongs to the state. That's what we are. We are capital to them. We're potential to make money for them. That's all we are. Anybody remember this? I remember this. I remember this well. This scene right here, I had to carry a compass inside out with the point facing out because I had two different groups of bullies that were after me, and that was just in high school. Take schools and prisons as an example of how this government works. This is not natural by any stretch of the imagination. And in seeing these similarities, we can begin to see what's wrong and why we're failing and where we're failing. Our children and our people, young and old. Look at the similarities between prisons and schools. Isn't it ironic? The similarities are no accident, but we're not supposed to see them. We're not supposed to be awake enough and wise enough to see these similarities. Making machines out of young and old, robots who conform and who obey, prefab humans, one who do what they're asked, do not question authority, and they just represent a carbon copy of one another. This is the name of the game. Money for the elite at the expense of the citizens. And in a short while, we will have nothing to say about it if nothing's changed. But for so many of us, we're too blind to see, and we're too mute to hear the screams of truth. We're getting warmer, though. Okay, check this out. Now we're into looking at prisons for a second. Profiteers of misery, they call them. The U.S. private prison industrial complex. According to a recent report by the Justice Policy Institute, the U.S.'s two largest private prison companies Corrections Corporation of America, CCA, and GEO Group pocketed collective annual revenues of $2.9 billion at the close of 2010. Interestingly enough, I'm looking at a graph of spiking growth in the prison population, and knowing that the CCA was established around the early 1980s, the spike literally starts going straight up from that point. A good meme to see this and to understand what's going on between then and now. 1972, 300,000 people were in prison. 2014, 2,300,000. What happened? State and federal prisoners, 1926 to 2005. Look at the growth of prisoner population, 1925 to 2011. It's easy to see. It's easy to see. And it's prison for profit. So I guess when you do any cursory research, a very small amount of research on the internet about prison profit, you come into two names, CCA and the GEO Group. CCA, the Corrections Corporation of America, manages more than 65 privatized U.S. correctional and detentional facilities with 90,000 beds in 19 states and the District of Columbia. Get a calculator real quick. That's 1,710,000 beds nationwide. The GEO Group owns and operates 65 U.S. correctional facilities with more than 65,000 beds.